No one really seems to talk about the most heartwarming episode of Clarence, Mystery Girl. The episode begins just like your average Clarence episode, with Jeff, Sumo, and Clarence doing something fun. In this case, it's a prank call. I love how unassuming this introduction is in the grand scheme of the whole episode, because the first minute has little to nothing to do with the rest of the plot, except for setting it up. The episode literally starts off with an ad for this thing called the Ding Dong Dinger, which is the stupidest name for anything I've ever heard of. Everything in this intro is set up to catch you completely off guard, for when Clarence just so happens to dial that fateful number.
Just kidding. I'm not really an alien. I'm Bella.
Oh, you guys, it's Bella.
Huh? Are you making prank calls? I love those.
Oh, good. Me too.
You sound like a pretty cool guy.
Clarence and Bella hit it off immediately. They share a lot of character traits with each other, they both love prank calls, they're both a bit weird, and thus they're able to talk about a lot of things with each other. Whenever one of them makes an offhand comment or something out of place, the other is easily able to pick it up and continue the discussion. This makes their dialogue feel really natural, like I'm genuinely just listening to two kids having a normal conversation. Something else to note here is how Jeff and Sumo leave the room the moment these two start talking. They weren't there to talk to some random girl on the phone, they were there to make prank calls. But what really interests me is how Clarence doesn't really seem to notice or care about this, which shows the audience how important and how engrossed he is in this new situation. One that he's probably never been in before, and one where he can sacrifice time with his friends for it. Even when they start watching a movie called The they don't stop talking, and if anything, finding this common interest strengthens their friendship.
Time to brush your teeth and get ready for bed. And I think it might be time to say goodnight to your little friend too, right?
I didn't realize it was already nighttime.
I guess I'll talk to you
Tomorrow?
tomorrow.
The next conversation is much of the same as before, but I personally enjoyed this one a lot more than the first. It has some little details in it that really enhance the conversation that they have. Imagine if this episode was just Clarence sitting on his bed talking to Bella. I wouldn't watch that, no matter how good the rest of this was. All the little things, like when they both describe themselves to one another, and then drop pictures of how they vision each other. Clarence just walking around, poking snails, licking the glue off of envelopes. It's in his character to not really focus on one thing at a time, and I'm glad the writers took that into consideration when making this episode. I do wish that we got to see more of what Bella was doing while on the phone. It would have been a great thing to see her environment and how she lives, and would have been a great insight into her character. Watching Clarence always brings me back to the good old days of being a kid. Everything just seemed so interesting and fascinating, and trying new things wasn't scary. One of the best parts of this episode was watching these two play a guessing game. Literally, that's it, and I love it. This episode is just a true testament to making a show that can capture the simplicity of being a kid in the most intriguing way possible.
I'm pretty fine. Oh, Jeremy.
What?
Come over for dinner tomorrow.
So Clarence invites Bella to have lunch at his house, and by that I mean over the phone. Yeah, he's basically having the equivalent of an e-date. There's not much I can say about this part, it's pretty short, but I do think it's cool that his parents are included in this episode. His mom and Chad do the most in this episode. They're all stars for sure. Jeff and Sumo swing by his house so they can hang out again, just like the good old times. Gotta love how they bring the Ding Dong Dinger back in the episode. I'm a sucker for callbacks, what can I say? Unfortunately for them, Bella calls at that exact moment and Clarence can't go. Sumo and Jeff are both disappointed and show it pretty much how you'd expect each of them to. And it's clear that they all miss each other's company. This is shown in the next scene, and Clarence has to deal with some girl trouble.
Clarence?
Huh? Oh, what?
Never mind. You sound like you're kind of busy.
Wait, what?
That's fine. I'll talk to you later.
Clarence is obviously confused and really upset at what happened. He's found himself in a position where he's disappointed his friends, and now just disappointed his new friend. Keep in mind, none of this is any of his fault. He's conflicted between choosing two different parties who both want all of his time. This makes the audience feel sympathetic towards him, especially when he starts talking about his experiences to his friends. He even forgets to grease up his board before sliding down this hill. Oh, and he also forgets something else.
Oh, I forgot Bella's birthday! Bella, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean anything by it.
Message number 13.
Man, It's crazy seeing him this down bad. I know that he's just a kid and these emotions are obviously going to be exaggerated, but there's just something about hearing him bawling his eyes out on the phone that really did something to me in real life. That's crazy. Naturally, his mom gets worried and gets in contact with Bella's parents, and comes in clutch as any good mom should. Every single character in this episode serves a purpose. Even characters like Sumo and Jeff, who I'm now just realizing barely appear in this episode, have at least one piece of dialogue that adds something to the scene they're in. So the big day arrives. Clarence is obviously super nervous. I mean, look at this man's sweat. Oh my goodness. Not to get too specific or anything, but this scene is actually pretty relatable. I've been in this man's shoes not even a month ago. That's crazy.
I hope you had a good birthday. Here, I got you a late birthday present.
It's an M.
Hey, isn't it cool that we can smell stuff that we show each other now? And I can, like, see you?
Whenever people ask me why I think animation is the best storytelling medium, I always point to scenes like this, because I genuinely think that this could only work within a cartoon like Clarence. Subtle things, like Bella's body language in the beginning versus when her and Clarence get comfortable, their facial expressions, the way they stutter over their words in the beginning, those things are really hard to replicate in a live action setting, and that's why I love cartoon. And if any show would help me realize this, it would of course be Clarence. I had the biggest smile on my face watching the last scene, where they were on the swing, and if there's one phrase I could use to describe this episode, it's typical Clarence.